Well, I personally find that I do better just being myself. I've gone to dramatic school, and, but I'll tell you, everything I do turns out kind of funny.
The story behind a beloved television actress's tragic death was far more complicated and darker than anyone ever realized. For years, Carol Wayne's mysterious drowning sparked rumors, unanswered questions, and endless speculation. But newly examined details suggest her death was not just an accident, but a tangled web of secrecy and circumstance few expected. This is more than a tale of Hollywood glamour gone wrong. It's a grim reminder of how fame can sometimes mask unsettling realities. What really led to Carol Wayne's final moments? The answer might change everything you thought you knew. The mysterious death. Carol Wayne's death on January 13, 1985, stunned fans and industry insiders alike. The actress, best known for her comedic roles on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, was found drowned off the coast of Manzanillo, Mexico. At first glance, the tragic news seemed straightforward, but the circumstances immediately raised questions. The peculiar location, timing, and details surrounding her disappearance painted a baffling picture that fueled speculation rather than closure. Wayne was reportedly vacationing with her boyfriend, comedian Peter Marshall, and several friends on that fateful night. Accounts of the evening were conflicting from the start, complicating efforts to piece together what really happened. Rescue teams located her body floating some distance from their rented boat. She was found face down in the water, wearing a nightgown instead of a swimsuit, which seemed odd to many familiar with the case. From the moment news broke, whispers of foul play and suspicious elements began circulating. Some witnesses suggested she might have exited the boat accidentally, while others wondered if there was more behind the scene. The boat's captain described some unusual behavior and events that evening, but no clear consensus emerged. Inconsistencies in stories from those present only deepened the mystery. Local authorities in Mexico ruled her death accidental, stating that she likely drowned after falling off the boat. However, some American officials and Hollywood associates expressed doubts, citing a lack of thorough investigation and unanswered questions about why she was alone in the water. The murky details regarding her last moments suggested this was more than just a simple accident. The official statement did not give much relief to the family members and close friends. A lot of people thought that part of the truth was hidden from the public, mainly because of the isolated situation and the presence of her relatives and friends. For a long time, different versions of the night have been told, but with incomplete and sometimes contradictory parts. What happened in those last hours was still very hard to get to. The emergency services personnel and the local fishermen were the main ones to recover her body. But then the reports about her condition and position raised more questions. Some of the people on the boat described a hectic event just before she disappeared when they were interviewed. However, notwithstanding these testimonies, the official inquiries were limited, and the important witnesses were seldom asked for more comprehensive answers. The capturing nature of Carol's death transformed it into an eternal enigma, as it combined elements of tragedy, circumstance, and secrecy. The desperately stunned fans unplugged, but the peculiarities led many to the deeper narrative, and they started testing the surface one. It was soon obvious that if the key to understanding her death was there, it was hidden so deep under half-truths and mute pacts. The confusion surrounding the circumstances couldn't be separated from who Carol Wayne was and the world she inhabited. Carol Wayne's life and career. Carol Wayne began her career in the 1960s, carving out a niche as a comedic actress with a playful charm and striking screen presence. She gained widespread recognition as the recurring matinee lady on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, a role that made her a household name to viewers across America. Her persona combined beauty, wit, and a hint of mischievousness, endearing her to fans and colleagues alike. Though often seen as a glamorous sidekick on television, Carol was a serious performer with ambitions beyond her supporting roles. She acted in a variety of films and TV shows, consistently showcasing versatility that extended past the laughs. Off-screen, she navigated the entertainment world with a mixture of vulnerability and resilience, balancing public expectations with private struggles. Her life was also marked by a series of complex relationships, including romances and friendships within the entertainment industry. Carol's bond with Peter Marshall, the game show host and comedian she was vacationing with at the time of her death, was particularly noted by those close to her. Their relationship, both personal and professional, was scrutinized in the wake of her passing. Carol, who was the center of attention, faced difficulties that were common to most women in Hollywood at that time. The demand of keeping a young-looking image, the fight for important roles, and the never-ending media attention made life very hard for her. Nevertheless, she kept her personality of being easy to talk to and down to earth with her friends, who often said she was a very nice and funny person behind the scenes. The progression of her career was up to her, but, on the other hand, it was also marked by the constant cutting off of her potential and the sticky trap of the industry. She had been interpreted by many co-workers as having much more skill than would ever be brought out due to the limitations on female comedians and actresses imposed by the industry during that time. This is a contributor to her feelings of frustration that she would sometimes express to her close friends. Carol, when not in front of the cameras, was seen as a very intellectual and contemplative person, traits that are the opposite of her public image. Her friends talked about her being very smart and occasionally sad, implying that she was quite a multifaceted personality, unlike the characters she played in movies. This very quality of hers made her both fascinating and also non-resilient, which is a kind of dilemma that many artists have to face. Carol's nearly decade-long stay on The Tonight Show only served to make her a legend, but at the same time, it meant that, for the most part, the public only knew Carol Wayne through one very famous character. The long-lasting pressure created from this association made the attempts to diversify harder. Thus, a career deadlock resulted. On the other side of the coin, she was still drawing the affection of both the public and her fellow artists, who admired her for both her skills and her aura. The following of Carol's life helps in understanding how laden with burdens she was in Hollywood, and it also makes the context of her last bewildering night clearer. The saga of her life was definitely more splendid than her early departure alone might have implied. The events of that last night presented conflicting reports that blurred the line between accident and something more troubling. Circumstances of that night. The night Carol Wayne died was intended as a getaway on the scenic Pacific coast of Mexico, but the vacation took a tragic turn nobody predicted. She was aboard a small charter boat with Peter Marshall, other companions, and a local crew when things began to unravel. Witnesses recalled that the atmosphere shifted abruptly, with reported disagreements and unusual behavior surfacing as the evening progressed. Shortly before her disappearance, Carol was allegedly last seen leaning over the boat, peering into the water. Some accounts say she slipped or fell accidentally. Others suggest a sudden event that forced her overboard. There were conflicting versions about whether she was wearing the expected swimming attire or a nightgown, which fueled speculation about what she was doing at that moment. The boat's captain and several passengers later gave statements that didn't fully align. Some described Carol's state as calm or distracted. Others implied tension or possible intoxication. Communication barriers with the crew and the late hour added to the confusion in witness testimonies. Emergency responses were activated, but the delay in reporting and disorganized search efforts may have hampered potential rescue. Complicating matters further was the absence of any clear sign of a struggle or trauma on Carol's body when her remains were found hours later. This lack of physical evidence left investigators and observers grappling with how to interpret the scene. The ocean had erased much, but the gaps in eyewitness accounts only deepened the mystery. Peter Marshall's recollections at the time touched on a disturbing realization that Carol was missing once the group noticed, describing frantic attempts to locate her. Yet, the timeline remained vague, and some details about the moments leading up to the fall were never clarified publicly. These ambiguities left room for doubt about whether more had occurred than was officially disclosed. There was also speculation about whether alcohol or other substances played a role. While some suggested Carol was under the influence, others disputed this, noting her professionalism and careful nature. The truth about her condition remained elusive, caught between rumors and limited formal investigation. The location itself presented challenges. The waters near Manzanillo were deep and had strong currents, making search efforts risky and complicated. Rescue teams, familiar with the area, worked under pressure but were ultimately only able to recover Carol's body. This somber outcome closed one chapter, but opened many questions. Attempts to reconstruct the timeline of that night revealed inconsistencies and shadows that refused to align cleanly. The mix of cultural differences, language barriers, and the presence of friends and strangers on the boat created an environment ripe for misunderstandings and miscommunication. The investigation and official findings would later attempt to bring closure, but left many unsatisfied. Investigation and official findings. The investigation into Carol Wayne's death began almost immediately after her body was recovered, but it was quickly mired in uncertainty. Mexican authorities officially ruled her drowning an accident, concluding that she had slipped off the small boat in the dark waters off Manzanillo. The autopsy reportedly revealed no signs of foul play, no wounds, no trauma inconsistent with drowning. This official version was presented as the likely explanation, but from the start, it left many questions unanswered. The investigation itself was relatively brief and lacked some of the rigor expected in suspicious or high-profile cases. The local authorities conducted limited interviews, and some key witnesses gave conflicting statements that did not seem to be fully reconciled. Language barriers and jurisdictional complications between Mexican law enforcement and American interests further complicated the inquiry. The media coverage, both local and international, criticized the investigation for its lack of transparency and thoroughness. In particular, the delay in reporting Carol missing was troubling to some observers. Those on the boat did not immediately realize she was gone, and the search that eventually took place was hampered by confusion and lack of coordination. This led to speculation that critical hours were lost when a timely rescue might have been possible. The somewhat haphazard handling raised eyebrows about how seriously the case was taken from the outset. Peter Marshall, who was with Carol at the time, cooperated with authorities but later expressed frustration with the investigation's limits. He described a scene filled with chaos and a sinking feeling as the night unfolded, but acknowledged his own gaps in recalling key moments clearly. His account remained one of the few detailed personal testimonies, but left many details ambiguous. This ambiguity contributed to ongoing doubts among those who knew Carol. Family members, upon hearing the official conclusions, expressed disbelief and dissatisfaction. They felt the investigation glossed over inconsistencies and failed to explore possible alternate explanations. For them, the silence from officials about certain troubling aspects was a source of pain and suspicion. Their calls for further inquiry were largely unmet, reinforcing a sense that something significant was left undisclosed. The coroner's report described drowning as the cause of death, supporting it with the presence of water in the lungs and ruling out intoxication or overdose. Nevertheless, the public was not given access to all forensic details, and some doubted the thoroughness of the autopsy. The whole situation that accompanied the secrecy of the forensic evidence was a source of further frustration for the truth seekers regarding Carol's death. Years later, the whispers in the air were that local authorities had been compelled to close the case fast, maybe to prevent an international incident, or to keep the tourist reputation of the area intact. This is still a matter of speculation, but the quickness of the case closure kept the rumor of a controversial nature alive for many years. The whole thing appeared to be a bureaucratic decision, rather than being based on solid answers. The official findings were at odds with some contemporaries and observers who refused to accept the accidental drowning explanation without reservations. They pointed to the strange circumstances, the nightgown instead of swimwear, conflicting witness statements, and Carol's meticulous personality as factors that made accidental drowning less plausible. The unresolved questions made the shadow over her death last a bit longer and cast doubts on the official narrative. The investigation's limitations influenced the thinking of the public for many years. They let the alternative theories and the unofficial inquiries behind the back of the cops and the medical examiners by friends, family, and fans. It became a chilling example of how unanswered questions can outlast facts, thus keeping a tragedy alive in the public imagination. The gulf between the official story and public perception was broad and unyielding. Though no proof emerged to officially contradict the ruling, the gap in trust created fertile ground for alternative stories to flourish, coloring perceptions of everything that came next. Theories and rumors. Over the decades, countless theories have attempted to explain the confusing circumstances of Carol Wayne's death. Some suggest it was a tragic accident, one born of alcohol, disorientation, or an ill-fated misstep during a nighttime boat trip. Others suspect darker motives, proposing that foul play or even intentional harm might have been involved. The lack of clear answers has allowed these competing narratives to coexist, each with its own set of supporters and critics. One popular theory centers on the possibility that Carol was intoxicated and accidentally fell overboard while intoxicated or disoriented. Reports indicate alcohol may have been consumed during the evening, and some witnesses implied impaired judgment. While this theory fits a tragic pattern seen in other similar cases, it clashes with accounts of Carol as a careful person who rarely took unnecessary risks, especially alone at night in unfamiliar waters. In contrast, rumors have long swirled that someone on the boat might have had a motive to harm her. Some speculate jealousy, financial disputes, or personal conflicts as reasons someone could have wanted to push her into the water or otherwise cause her harm. These theories are fueled by the ambiguous behavior reported by witnesses and inconsistencies in official statements, but no concrete evidence has ever emerged to support them. Another angle suggests a possible cover-up or conspiracy to obscure the true cause of Carol's death. Proponents argue that powerful interests linked to the entertainment industry or local officials might have influenced the investigation's outcome. Such claims are difficult to substantiate and often rely on hearsay, yet they persist due to the suspicious gaps in the official record and unanswered questions from those close to Carol. There are also theories grounded in accident, but complicated by environmental factors, such as strong currents, dark waters, and sudden weather changes near Manzanillo. Some experts note that even a minor misstep in unfamiliar conditions can turn fatal very quickly. This scenario portrays the event as a cruel twist of fate, amplified by the natural hazards of the location. Public fascination with the case grew as details and rumors circulated through tabloid media, late-night shows, and celebrity gossip columns. Sensationalist coverage often magnified contradictions to create intrigue, but this sometimes obscured the essential facts. The mixture of truth and exaggeration further muddled the public's understanding, turning Carol's death into a cautionary Hollywood legend. Family and friends occasionally weighed in on these theories, sometimes publicly dismissing sensational claims, and at other times expressing belief in alternate possibilities. Their divided views reflect the emotional complexity surrounding the loss and the search for meaning in incomprehensible tragedy. Each new rumor stirred hope for clarity that was never fully realized. Among the most persistent rumors is that a fight or dispute occurred shortly before Carol vanished. Though some witnesses alluded to tension on the boat, no direct evidence of altercation was ever confirmed. Still, the suggestion of conflict lingers because it offers a motive and a dramatic explanation to otherwise puzzling circumstances. The layers of rumor and theory only deepen the challenge of uncovering what truly happened and lead us toward new revelations that can finally shed light on the truth. New evidence and revelations. Years after Carol Wayne's death, new pieces of information and testimonies emerged, shaking the foundation of the original accident narrative. Some retired investigators and insiders hinted at details that had been overlooked or intentionally downplayed during the initial inquiry. These revelations suggested that the story of Carol's last hours was far more complex than anyone publicly acknowledged. As new voices stepped forward, the mystery gained fresh momentum, igniting renewed scrutiny among fans and experts alike. One particularly significant revelation came from former crew members who served on the boat that night. Though initially silent, some later expressed that tensions aboard the vessel had been higher than publicly admitted, describing heated exchanges and unease among passengers. Their accounts mentioned moments of drinking beyond what was officially reported, intensifying suspicions about the atmosphere just before Carol disappeared. This painted a fraught scene, different from the official version of a calm getaway. Additionally, certain eyewitnesses began to question the reliability of some original statements given to the authorities. Memory, understandably affected by trauma and time, might have clouded early accounts, but some suggest deliberate withholding of information to protect reputations or avoid legal consequences. This raised the disturbing possibility that key facts about Carol's fall into the water were obscured rather than missed. Forensic experts consulted decades later pointed out contradictions between the autopsy findings released at the time and observable facts about the condition of Carol's body. While drowning was confirmed, there were subtle signs, such as bruising inconsistent with accidental slips, that hinted at a possible struggle or at least physical altercation prior to her entering the water. These forensic nuances have never been fully explored in public forums or official proceedings. Family members also revealed that in the years following Carol's death, they received anonymous tips and letters suggesting that people close to Carol knew more than they admitted. These mysterious communications fueled suspicions of a cover-up or silenced witnesses. Though frustratingly vague, such clues suggested layers of secrecy surrounding the event, as well as a reluctance by some to revisit painful truths. Carol's estate's private detectives are said to have discovered some irregularities in the documents of the financial transactions and letters of the deceased, thus pointing to disagreements or tensions that might have caused her to suffer from a personal crisis that was getting out of control, among other things. The introduction of such findings suggested that the potential involvement of external forces or threats had gone beyond the simple accident scenario to become a new facet of the mystery surrounding her death. The scenario was further complicated by the strange behavior of the authorities immediately after the event, including omission or holding back of evidence, and the speedy closing of the case that so conveniently bypassed any extensive legal or criminal scrutiny. A pattern was evident here that hinted at the possibility of institutional interests interfering. It is a difficult task to show that the necessity to protect tourism or maintain good diplomatic relations could have been a reason for not conducting a complete investigation. However, it is surely a possibility that cannot be dismissed. Last but not least among the factors to be considered is the fact that interviews with the people who were closest to Carol have recently been conducted to reveal her mental state in the months preceding her death. One of her friends painted the picture of a woman who was dealing with her insecurities and fears, but at the same time, a person who would not give up on her hope and dreams for the future. This emotional richness has not only given a softer image of the carefree star, but has also added the tragic human aspect to the story. All of these new elements, taken together, are forming a picture of Carol Wayne's demise that is no longer just a drowning, but a complicated event full of secrets and questions waiting to be answered. The changing evidence leads us to think that what really happened on that boat was anything but clear-cut. These shadows around Carol's final moments naturally lead us to examine one of the most charged and troubling aspects: the motives and suspicions surrounding those closest to her. Possible motives and suspicions. The relationships surrounding Carol Wayne have long been a focus for those searching for answers. Peter Marshall, who was present on the boat, naturally attracted attention, though no formal accusations were ever made against him. Still, some close observers note the complexity of their relationship, with professional partnership intertwined with personal dynamics. and wonder if tensions may have contributed to the tragedy. Exploring these relationships reveals a web of connections that complicate understanding what really happened. Beyond Peter Marshall, there were other figures in Carol's life who aroused curiosity and suspicion. Carol was reportedly navigating friendships and romances that occasionally sparked jealousies and rivalries. The high-pressure world of Hollywood, combined with personal hardship, could breed conflict that's easy to overlook in a tragic story. Rumors of disputes, whether about career decisions or private disagreements, fueled speculation about possible motives for harm. Some have suggested financial issues as a potential factor. While Carol had enjoyed a successful career, there were reports of financial strain or unresolved debts, which might have created pressure or conflicts with associates. These financial ambiguities sometimes shadow the personal losses in mysterious deaths, adding a practical dimension to emotional turmoil. Whether money played any role in Carol's final moments remains unproven, but remains part of the discussion. More troubling are the rumors alleging that those closest to Carol may have found advantages in her disappearance. These suspicions, largely circulated in tabloid circles and unverified whispers, often focus on inheritance, career direction, or the settlement of personal favors and debts. While such theories are far from confirmed, their persistence speaks to the human tendency to seek a rationale for senseless tragedy. An additional source of suspicion revolves around the behavior of some individuals shortly after the incident. Reports emerged that some companions were evasive when questioned and inconsistent in their accounts. The seeming reluctance to fully cooperate with investigators created an aura of concealment and ignited conspiracy theories. Whether this was fear, shock, or deliberate obfuscation remains unknown. Psychological dynamics also come into play. In high-stress social groups like those on the boat, disagreements can escalate quickly, masking deeper resentments or hidden conflicts. Carol's own vulnerability could have intensified interpersonal frictions, which might have triggered impulsive or regrettable actions by someone nearby. The precise nature of these emotions escapes us, but underscores the unpredictable human element in tragedies. As these suspicions weave through the narrative, they set the stage for uncovering the most credible explanation, one that challenges comfortable assumptions and reveals a darker truth beneath the surface. What really happened? After decades of mystery, conflicting testimonies, and murky investigations, the most reasonable conclusion about Carol Wayne's death points to a tragedy far from a simple accident. New evidence and critical examination suggest that her passing involved a combination of misjudgment, strained relationships, and chaotic circumstances that night on the boat. While definitive proof remains elusive, the layers of secrecy and silence surrounding key moments make it clear the truth is darker and more complicated than originally reported. The physical evidence, including autopsy inconsistencies and unexplained bruises, indicates Carol may have been involved in a struggle or confrontation before entering the water. Witnesses' contradictory accounts hint at heightened tensions and emotional volatility among those present. Taken together, these factors suggest a fatal fall that might not have been purely accidental, but possibly tied to an altercation or moment of panic. It appears that alcohol and emotional stress played significant roles that night. While Carol was known for her professionalism, the environment on the boat was far from controlled or calm. Drinking, raised voices, and possible arguments could have impaired judgment and escalated tensions, contributing to a dangerous situation. This chaos may have led to a misstep or push, resulting in her falling overboard in a vulnerable state. Peter Marshall's own fragmented recollections reinforce the sense of confusion and distress on the boat. His presence and involvement, though not incriminating in any legal sense, underscore the complex interpersonal dynamics at play. Their relationship was reportedly volatile, and moments of disagreement or misunderstanding could have influenced what transpired. While no direct motive has ever been proven, the emotional undertones cannot be ignored. The apparent reluctance of some witnesses to fully cooperate with authorities adds weight to speculation about a cover-up, or at least intentional silence. Whether rooted in fear, loyalty, or self-preservation, this withholding of information helped obscure the reality of Carol's final hours. The rushed closure of the case by Mexican officials supports the theory that there was an institutional push to avoid deeper scrutiny. Carol's financial and personal problems probably heightened the already existing tension around her death. The disputes, debts, and emotional challenges evidence a woman fighting against the odds without anyone knowing about it. The stress brought about by the situation, plus the tense social atmosphere on the boat, gives one a better, more human understanding of the tragedy's context. It wasn't just an accident, but a breaking point of a tough period for Carol. More than anything, the most probable explanation is that a tragic fall was caused by a dangerous cocktail of alcohol, emotional turmoil, and poor judgment. Be it an accidental slip or a temporary loss of control during an argument, the outcome was the same: a very dear actress lost to the sea under difficult and mysterious circumstances. Her death was not an ordinary misfortune, but a complex event influenced by human traits and hidden matters. The conclusion does not offer easy comfort, but rather a more precise picture of the realities that lie behind the rumors and the silence. The death of Carol Wayne signifies that the truth in such calamities is generally uncovered in the uncomfortable darkness rather than in easy and tidy explanations. The questions, some of which are still unanswered and some only partly answered, point to the difficulties involved in human relationships as well as to life's fragility. In the end, what became of Carol Wayne is a tale that warns us about the issues of trust, perception, and the unseen conflicts that often accompany public personalities. It challenges us to explore beyond the merely superficial stories and to accept the sadness and doubt that such cases invariably come alongside. Carol Wayne's story is a haunting journey from fame to an unsolved tragedy, now clearer but darker than ever. It reminds us that the truth often hides beneath layers of silence and suspicion. If you found this exploration compelling, please like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into stories that demand understanding.